Welcome everyone to Redesigning School Counseling. This is a webinar for first-year schools, and the focus of this webinar is to prepare for Advisory Council Meeting 1, which is your introduction. My name is Sue Reynolds, and I am the president of the American Student Achievement Institute. So here's today's agenda. As always, we'll begin with a quick review of the RSC beliefs and the RSC process. That will help you to put today's topic into perspective, as you can kind of see how it fits in the whole process. Then specifically our focus today is to walk through meeting 1. So you've recruited your advisory councils, and they're set to go for your first meeting, which is so exciting. And now we're looking at prepping for that first meeting. So we'll do a walkthrough of the meeting. I'll actually pull up every PowerPoint slide and kind of walk through it with you, give you some tips. And then we'll talk about what submissions you'll have after this meeting is held, and the rubric items for that submission. And then we'll go online and look at the process page and also the manual page to show you all the resources that are available and then how to enter information. Okay, so that's the agenda. In terms of the review, just real quickly, again, our RSC main belief is that school counseling programs help students make sound choices in areas that impact academic success. So it's all about those student choices and helping kids make the right choices that it will then impact their academic success. So this is just kind of another way to show the same thing. We believe that when students are involved in sound guidance and counseling programs, that they make those better choices, and as a result of that, student achievement goes up. So when we're designing the school counseling program this year, we're just going to work this backwards. We're going to start with the achievement goals that are in your school improvement plan. And then we're going to ask, okay, what choices do kids need to make in order for our school to be able to reach those goals? And then we'll design a school counseling program, guidance and counseling activities that will help kids make those targeted choices. So in terms of the process that will help us do all of that, we actually have now completed the first step, yay. So you've created a steering team, you've collected data last spring through the surveys that you gave, you have completed self-studies, and you put together an advisory council. So now we're ready for that first meeting with the advisory council. So the topic of the first meeting is an introduction. There is going to be one product that comes out of this meeting. It's a set of belief statements about the impact that school counselors can have on students and on teachers and on the community. But mainly this meeting is just an introduction, and it's also the other really focus of the first meeting is to introduce vocabulary and concepts. So it's just kind of bringing everybody up to speed so that when we get into the next discussion, everybody's kind of on the same page. So that will happen this month. That's what we're prepping for today. Then in October, the Advisory Council will help you create a vision, which is a very lofty, pie-in-the-sky dream of what they would like your students and to be like in your building, and the adults to be like who are around those students, what you want your ideal student achievement data to be. It's kind of the dream, and the vision will draw everybody into the same direction. Then in November, we'll start saying, okay, well, if that's our dream, if our dream that our 100% of the kids are just wildly successful, then what are our program goals? And unlike a vision, program goals are realistic. So we're going to say exactly which students are going to make better choices, what are the better choices we want them to make, how many of the students are making those choices now, what's our target for how many kids we want to make those choices, and when do we want that to happen by. So we're writing, if you will, SMART goals, goals that are very concrete. Then, once we know what those goals are, then we'll start to look at, are there some of those goals that we'd really like to hit especially hard in the coming year? So we'll take some time first to expand our resources, especially the resource of time, because we know the more time that school counselors have, the more of those program goals they can turn into priority areas, to priority goals. So we'll expand time, and we'll talk with your advisory council also about expanding resources, maybe funding, materials, and then we'll come up with maybe even just 1 or 2 or 3 priority goals that your program is going to do double duty on and really hit hard in the coming year. Once we know what those program goals are in December or January, then we'll start to ask the question, what's going to get in the way of us trying to get more kids to make that choice? And there's really 3 things that could get in the way. One thing is that kids don't have the knowledge that they need to make the choice that we want them to make. We'll learn that by looking at the guidance data that you collected through the surveys. Another thing that could get in the way is that the kids have personal or social issues that are just interfering with all of their choices. And we'll know that by looking at the counseling data based on the survey that you did last spring. And then the other thing that we can look at is, do kids even have the opportunity to make those choices? And we'll know that by looking at the survey data from the counselor survey that you did last spring. So, so we'll figure out why kids aren't making the choices we want them to make. We'll do that in February. And then once we know why, then we'll come back in March and say, okay, what are we going to do about it? What activities are we going to put in place? Do we need guidance activities so that kids can gain knowledge? Do we need counseling activities to help kids overcome the personal or social issues that may be interfering with their decisions? Do we need to put advocacy activities in place? And then, of course, we also need management activities to manage our program. So we'll define then all of our activities, and then in April and May, we'll start to prepare for those activities. So we'll write lesson plans, we'll develop calendars, we'll create a budget, we'll do all the behind-the-scenes things to make those activities actually happen and get off paper and into practice. Okay, so that's the process. Not seeing any hands up, so I'm going to go on. So this month, what we're doing is talking about how to prepare for the Advisory Council Meeting 1. And again, the topic of the Advisory Council meeting, the first one, is just the introduction to redesigning school counseling and what this all is about. So here's the agenda for the first meeting, just kind of an overview of the agenda. And let me actually pull that up, and I'll show that to you. Now I've got to make sure I can find it. It should be right here. Okay, oops, there we go. Let me blow this up a bit. Okay, so here's the agenda. You're going to be able to download this agenda. And you'll see that, first of all, that we've written the word time out here. We don't know what time you're going to start your meeting. So it might be 6 o'clock for some schools, might be 10 o'clock in the morning for other schools. So whatever time you're starting your meeting, right there. And then we're anticipating that this first activity is going to take about 20 minutes. So if you started at 6, the next time we say 6:20. All of our meetings with our advisory councils are designed to be 2-hour meetings because we want to have time both for sharing information, but even more important, for discussion. So we set them up as 2-hour meetings. Some schools have told us that they break them into 2 1-hour meetings. You know, that's fine as long as you get the content in. We've been using this agenda format for many, many, many years. We've also been told by schools that some schools have shortened the agenda. We don't recommend that, but we also understand that sometimes you just have to do that. So I just want to caution that when you shorten the agenda or make adjustments, you're weakening the process. I understand that sometimes that's necessary, but you just have to think about, what do you gain, what do you lose? Okay, so after the welcome, we're doing an intro of the foundational belief, activities, and accountability. That takes about 40 minutes. Then we take a break. Then we're introducing Redesigning School Counseling, the organizational structure, the design process. And then we also want your advisory council to understand that you're putting together a program portfolio, and that at the end of all this you will be recognized by the American School Counselor Association with their RAMP Award, or for schools that are in Indiana, also by the Department of Education through the Indiana Gold Star School Counseling Award. So then there's a couple of activities. Right in the get-go, we want your council to understand that your meetings will not be sit and get meetings. We're actually, all of the meetings are set up for you to listen and your advisory council to talk. At this first meeting, we have to define like vocabulary and all the organizational structure and all that. So there's a lot of you talking in this first meeting. That's normally not the case. It's usually the advisory council talking, and we want to help the council see that right from the beginning. So at this meeting, you'll spend some time defining group norms. We'll provide you with a sheet for that, which is here it is. So this is a sheet that you can, we suggest you blow up into a poster. You can go to Kinko's or FedEx or just a print shop and ask them if they'll blow this up in a poster. And as one of the steering team members is facilitating the discussion, another one could just be jotting down all the ideas. So norms are just kind of like rules for how you're going to treat each other during your discussions. And they might include things like we're not going to interrupt each other, we're going to always put kids first, we're going to start on time, we're not going to have sidebar conversations. We're not going to be caught in what we've always done. We're going to think out of the box. So just kind of norms that you want to guide your work together in this year. There we go. So, oops, I was back on the agenda. Let me go back to that. And then the last part is an advisory council brainstorm about the benefits of school counseling. And again, this is, you're going to capture all these ideas, and this will become one of the products that you submit. There's an activity sheet that goes with that, and it looks like this. And so as we work through the slides, you'll ask the advisory council, what are the benefits of students? What benefits do students get from a well-designed school counseling program? What are the benefits of teachers? What are the benefits to administrators, parents? And then the last one is the workforce. So your business members will jump in on that part of the discussion. So you're using their input, and then you'll create a benefit statement. And we always try to give you samples of the products that we're looking for. And so here's a sample of benefits. So benefits for students, and then for teachers, administrators, parents. Don't worry ever about using sentence structures and wording that we provide. If we've given you wording that makes sense to you and you like it, it's perfectly okay with us for you to use it exactly as written. On the other hand, you may also edit anything you want. So for example, you might pull up this document and you like the template, you like the way it's just set up on the page. And rather than design your own template, you could just go in, take out all the comments, and then add yours in. Or you may just want to start with this and edit it, or you may want to take out half of it and add new stuff. So again, this stuff is maybe edited anytime you want to. Also the PowerPoint presentation when we get to that. A lot of schools like to take out Redesigning School Counseling at the top, and they'll just write in, they'll write in the name of their school, environmental charter school, counseling program, and then school counseling benefits. So that's okay. The only thing that we ask is when there are pages that have a copyright at the bottom is that you leave that on there, and you'll notice that we give you permission to use all of our work, and you may revise it as you'd like, but if you're going to replicate it, it needs to be replicated with citation. Once in a while we find our work in people's textbooks under somebody else's citation, so we just want to make sure that we maintain the intellectual property that we've come up with. So I appreciate your being careful with that. Thank you. Okay, so that's the agenda. Then, okay, the next step is to do the walkthrough. So let me come to the PowerPoint. And this is the slides for your meeting. And once again, if you don't like our slides, edit them, take them out, rework them. You know, we're just trying to do the starting work for you. You may also use them exactly like they are if you like them. Okay, so this is the introduction. And the first thing we want to do is have people introduce themselves. And this is actually the warm-up activity this time, is to ask people as they're introducing themselves to identify a group of folks that they could represent at the table. So you may know that you've invited Jane Doe to be part of your council because Jane Doe is the parent of a free and reduced lunch student. When we ask Jane Doe that, Jane Doe may say, well, I could represent third grade parents. That's fine. Whatever Jane Doe says is the population that she could represent is fine. You know, you wouldn't want to come back and say, oh, but Jane, you're also the parent of a free and reduced lunch student. So whatever they come up with is fine. What we're trying to establish here is that they are at the table because they're a voice for a group of people. And we want them to understand that if they fail to come to the next meeting, that voice is gone. So Jane, you know, hopefully it's you know, the light bulb's going off. There won't be any third grade parents won't be represented if I'm not here at the next meeting. So folks may say, you know, I'm representing people from this town, or I'm representing the Hispanic population, or I could represent special ed students, or, you know, high ability students, you know, whatever. So we just want folks to understand that they're not there as individuals, they're there representing others who are not there. Okay, very important. Then the next slide just kind of talks about the agenda, so you're going over the agenda with them and talking that through. And then we come to the foundational beliefs, and I'm not going to go through all these slides because you've heard me do it a million times, or at least a couple times. On this slide, what we're wanting to establish is that the school counseling program that you're trying to design with them is a program that would reach every student. If your school is typical, it's very unusual before schools go through a process like this that they're reaching every student. And in this RSC, as you set up your activities, you'll be doing it in a way that is designed so that every student in the building benefits. And it's not just hit and miss. We hear from a lot of schools that the students who tend to get more services than others are kids who have an advocate. It's either a parent who's saying to their child, you need to go to the counselor today and sign up for that PSAT test. You know, so the parents advocating and pushing. Or it's a teacher who is having an issue with a student and tells the student, go down and see the counselor. I don't want you to come back until that counselor has fixed you. Heaven forbid, but we know they say that. Or sometimes it's a kind of a systemic thing, like students who are involved in special ed have annual case reviews where the counselors are involved with making sure that those students have appropriate guidance and are enrolled in appropriate coursework each year. So, but there are a lot of kids that don't have an advocate who are shy. They won't come in. Sometimes kids are their own advocate. They'll come in and get a pass to see their counselor. There's a lot of kids that don't fit any of those categories, and they get very little services from their counselors. So we really want to establish here that the program that you're coming up with this year is a program for every student. Doesn't matter who their parents are, who their teachers are, it doesn't matter. We're going to reach out and get to every kid. So we want to say that right up to the beginning and kind of set that mindset with your council. Okay. Then we also want to start introducing vocabulary here. So we're telling your council that there are 4 different types of activities: guidance, counseling, advocacy, and management. And we want to define those 4 activities because we'll be using those terms all year. So let's look at each activity. So the first kind of activity is the guidance activities. So guidance activities are defined as the activities that help all students learn and apply knowledge needed to make sound educational careers and personal social decisions. So when school counselors are in a guidance mode, they're in a teaching mode, helping students to understand what are AP courses, how do you be assertive rather than aggressive. We're teaching. And just like math curriculum is for all students, the guidance curriculum is for all students. So when we're doing guidance activities, it's not hit and miss. It's not like a tutorial activity. It's something that we've planned a curriculum that either we are delivering or other people are delivering, and every single student in the building is getting it. It could also be application of that knowledge. So I may go into a classroom and teach students how to sign up for courses for the coming year and what courses would link with their post-secondary plans. I'm in teaching mode there. But then a week later, I'm meeting individually with every student to help them apply that knowledge to their own individual decisions. So, and then the other thing about guidance is that it can be provided by school counselors. In my own school, most of our guidance curriculum was presented by teacher advisors in a teacher advisor program. But it can also be presented by parent volunteers, by school counselors, community members. In my school, we also incorporated our guidance curriculum with our academic curriculum. So for example, when our econ teacher taught opportunity costs, he applied it to making a decision about post-secondary education, and then also taught about the types of post-secondary education while he was teaching econ. Econ was a required course in our school, so everybody got those activities. So we're trying to introduce the idea here too that it's not just the counselors that can teach these things, it's other people that have that knowledge as well. Okay, so in a guidance curriculum, just like a math curriculum or a language arts curriculum, we also want to have indicators and standards. So in RSC, we have 3 different standards. We call them academic development, career development, and personal social development. When I'm talking with folks who are not counselors, I like to call those like subject areas. Just like in math, we have geometry and algebra. In school counseling and guidance, we have academic area, career area, and personal social area. And then there's knowledge that we want all kids to be able to demonstrate that they've mastered. So, for example, in academic, all 5th graders will demonstrate learning skills. In career development, all 8th graders will write a career plan. Personal social development, all 12th graders will describe conflict management techniques. So this is a curriculum with like subject areas and with indicators underneath those subject areas. And as we go through the year, once we know what the goals and the root causes are, and then we'll start to develop guidance activities that are based on these kind of indicators. Okay, and then another thing we want your counselor to realize is that, again, and I always like to say, just like math and English, we have lesson plans. So a lesson plan title might be learning styles, and then there's a goal of the lesson. All students will describe ways in which they can adjust their classroom learning strategies to complement their learning styles, materials, time required, procedures for the lesson. Just like a math lesson, we have guidance lessons. And then we're also introducing that sometimes guidance teaching happens one-on-one, but remember for guidance it has to be with all students. So it's some program you're doing where every single student in the building is getting a one-on-one appointment. In my school we tried to meet individually with we did meet individually with each student twice a year. And there was a curriculum in each one of those meetings. It didn't matter who your counselor was, you got that same set of discussion in that one-on-one. And then guidance settings can also be in classrooms where a counselor comes in to do a lesson, or where the teacher does a guidance lesson that's either integrated with their academic work or is a standalone that they've added in. Could be teachers, could be school counselors, could also be community members. We had in our program a lot of folks in the community, like our Chamber of Commerce. They knew that one of our indicators was around interviewing, so they came in and did all the lessons on interviewing with our kids and then did mock interviews. So it could be community members, and then also teacher advisor programs. It's a great way to teach the guidance curriculum. Okay, so that's guidance. Let's look at counseling. Second kind of the type of the 4 types of activities. So counseling activities are activities that help some students, not all like guidance, but some students successfully address social and or personal concerns that are interfering with learning. If your school is normal, about 1 in 5 of your students will report that they have a social or personal issue that's interfering with their learning. So when we're counseling, we're helping kids address those issues. And unlike guidance, which is teaching and can be taught by, folks that have the knowledge, teachers, parents, teacher advisors, community members, counseling activities, we believe, should be provided only by folks that are licensed in one of the helping areas. So a licensed school counselor, a licensed school social worker, and a licensed school psych. These people have the theory, but they also have supervised practice experience, which we think is incredibly important in the counseling activities. So we would recommend that only licensed folks do the counseling activities. So we know, and just kind of this may be a light bulb going off for your advisory council, but kids bring a lot of different issues to the table that interfere with learning. So abuse, drugs and alcohol, friends issues, conflicts, just all kinds of things, stress, suicide thoughts. And again, if we want all kids to learn at a rigorous level, we have to help kids address these issues that they bring to school. Okay, so in the counseling area, one of the indicators asks for you to set up a student assistance team. So the members of that team are usually a licensed student assistance professional, so counselor, social worker, psych, trained teachers that have been trained in active listening, also the limits of confidentiality, and then the procedure for what to do when you're breaking confidentiality. And then trained administrators who also have that same training. So the counselors that are setting this up are providing training for those other members of the team as well. So this team is set up to receive referrals either from teachers or from parents or from the kids themselves. They review the cases. They recommend interventions, might be group counseling or individual brief counseling or some type of intervention, and then they set a date for a follow-up. And at the follow-up, they decide, is the intervention working? Is the issue resolved and so we can stop? Or if the intervention's not working, what do we need to do? So we would suggest that you set up a student assistance team, and again, it's one of the requirements. So another thing we wanted to point out is that while we want licensed professionals to provide the counseling interventions, counseling, consultation, referrals, there are other levels of interventions that folks could do that that require not as much training as the level 3s. So we know that peer helpers can help their peers resolve more easy issues. Teacher advisors can be active listeners, and community mentors. And again, all those folks need to be trained in friendly listening. They're also sharing some information, but especially in the limits of confidentiality, because we want to make sure that they refer when they need to, they break confidentiality when they need to. They also need training in the differences between friendly listening and active counseling. We don't want them to jump into that counselor role. And then finally, another level of intervention are just very simple things that parents and teachers can do: reassign a seat, do a homework log, just very simple interventions. So kind of all different kinds of things there. Okay, third type of activity is advocacy activities. These are activities that help create an environment that supports rigorous learning for all groups of students, including low-income students, just all students, and also all individual students. So lots of different types of folks can provide this, but we think that this is a legitimate use of counselor time and is an important role of the school counselor. Let me give you two examples. One example is, just from my own experience, we had a career in tech ed course that required students to buy tools. And our low-income kids couldn't afford the tools, so they couldn't take the course. So we were advocates for that, a systemic change. We changed the prerequisite for that class. We advocated with our administration and with that department to get that changed on behalf of that group of students. So that was advocacy. And then also, we all know that sometimes that there's individual students that have bumped into an adult in the building who means well but is, just not being appropriate with the student. It either is backing the student into a corner when there's an issue, or all the different things that could pop up. And so sometimes, as counselors, we're advocates for individual students. We may go to talk to a teacher on a student's behalf. Or we might be at a case conference as a student advocate in special ed. So lots of places where we're individual advocates as well. Okay, so we talked about this, groups of students and individual students. And then the fourth type of final type of school counseling activity is program management. Management activities are behind-the-scenes activities necessary for making the school counseling program run smoothly and efficiently, provided by school counselors. Things like when I sit down in the morning and I'm writing passes for the kids so that they'll come in to see me, that's management. There's lots of different management activities. Program development, what we're doing right now is program management. Personal development, when you're going to conferences or seminars or webinars like we're doing now. Networking with other professionals, evaluating your school counseling program. When you collected your data last spring, that was a program management activity. So these are all activities, and they're good activities. You've got to do them in order to make your school counseling program run. And then there's one other type of activity that we need to name, but it's not part of school counseling. And we've named these activities just non-program activities, so let's define them. Any activity that does not help students master those guidance standards or address a personal or social problem that's interfering with learning is a non-program activity. In other words, any program that doesn't have anything to do with guidance, counseling, or advocacy or management is a non-program activity. So when my principal asks me to do substitute teaching, that's a non-program activity. If I'm doing master scheduling teachers, balancing course loads, that's a non-program activity. So there are a lot of non-program activities that some counselors are asked to do. In fact, when you do your time task studies this year, we find that some counselors discover they spend 90% of their time doing things that have nothing to do with guidance and counseling. So are these important tasks? Absolutely. I mean, we have to have report cards. We have to complete state reports. We have to balance class loads. I mean, all these things have to happen. But we just want folks to understand that when school counselors are doing these things, these are not school counseling activities. And these things take counselors away from activities that are school counseling. So later we're going to talk about program balance, and we'll start to talk with your advisory council about, just how much time is appropriate to spend on these activities altogether. And that's when we're talking about balance. So we'll come up with that. And I can tell you my own program, I started out with 90% of my time in non-program activities. And when I left my school to go to the Department of Education in Indiana, we were down to 10%. We went from 90% to 10% in non-program. It took several years and a lot of creativity. We didn't have new staff. We didn't have more money. We just had to figure out a way to kind of reassign tasks in our building so it wasn't the counselor that was getting everything. Okay, next topic is accountability, and again, with your advisory council, we want them to understand that that you're designing an accountable school counseling program. So we talked about this pyramid before, and we want folks to understand that when you're looking at guidance down in the bottom left, you're going to be looking at the percentage of students who have mastered targeted guidance indicators, just like math indicators, except they're guidance indicators. In the bottom right, when we're talking about counseling, we're going to look at the percentage of students who attain a personal goal that they've set in counseling, either individual counseling or group counseling. In the middle, when we're looking at targeted choices, we're going to look at what percentage of kids are making those choices. And then in the top, we'll look at what percentage of the students are reaching our school's academic goals. The middle one in red is the focus of your school counseling program. The whole idea of school counseling is to help more kids make better choices. We're going to do it through guidance and counseling, but that's the focus. So the bottom line accountability from year to year is when I look at my baseline data and then I look at my follow-up data, are more kids making the targeted choices that we've focused our program on. So that's the accountability focus part. For me, I think accountability is your best friend, because my guess is that both of your schools have pretty sound school counseling programs, or you wouldn't be jumping into RSC to begin with. And your data is going to show that to people. It won't be just you saying, oh, we have a great school counseling program, or a flyer that you've got, but you'll have numbers to back that up, and that is really powerful. I just heard it from another school yesterday that after they finished RSC, the advisory council talked to the school board and they hired another counselor. And it was the data, they said, that did it. We talk to schools all the time that keep their counselors when there's cuts in positions, because the data is there to back that the counselors are making a difference. So data is just really, really important. So you've looked at some of that data when you gave the surveys, but you only want to make sure that the advisory council who has not seen the surveys understand that this is how you're collecting the data. There are probably better ways to collect the data, but this is a fast way to get a lot of data from a lot of kids, and you'll be having some really interesting numbers to look at. So this is the surveys way, and then you can also tell them that there are also some things that we're just going to count. Like, we can count up how many kids actually did a career interest inventory, and we've got a copy in our office. How many kids have a high school course plan, and I can, open up my file drawer and point to them. How many kids have submitted a FAFSA? You can get that information from the federal government. So there'll be things that you can count, and then also the survey items. Okay, we're halfway through. A lot of it's discussion after this, so a lot of your talking is finished at this point. There's just one more talking section. Okay, so 10-minute break, I think that was what we scheduled. And then coming back from break, we're saying, okay, let's look at the organizational structure. And then you're explaining to folks that you have a steering team, and I let them know who's on it, and that your job is really to be the managers of program design. So you're going to facilitate 6 meetings or 6 discussions with the council, and then you're going to use that council to develop a vision-based and data-driven school counseling program. And it's so important that they're there, because without them there, all of your decisions would be based on the perspectives of the 2 people that are on the steering team. This way, and then you can remind them, remember all those perspectives that you said you were here representing? This way, when we make decisions, all those different perspectives are going to be brought to the table as we make that decision. Okay. Then the little worker bee there, we're wanting folks on the advisory council to understand that they are not the worker bees. You are the worker bees. They don't need to worry about like homework assignments or having to do stuff between meetings. They just need to show up at the meetings, and that you will do the work between the meetings. So the advisory council is what they are, and their role is to attend 6 meetings, 6 discussions, provide input on program design, And then as you start to implement, they'll provide feedback on the implemented activities, and then they'll also serve as ambassadors for the school counseling program. And that won't happen immediately, but as they get to know you, they'll realize how much you care about kids, and they'll become very protective of your time, and they'll just naturally become ambassadors for you. It's really a cool thing to watch. And then we're reminding folks that they are not the worker bees, they are the thinker bees. So they just need to come. There will be a couple of times where we ask them to look at data before they come to a meeting so that they can come informed. But basically they're just coming and talking. So that's their role. Then another thing that we want to just introduce again is the implementers. Can be all different kinds of people. Once you have the new program set up, the implementers can be parents, they can be all different kinds of educators, and they can be community organizations. That there might be, a youth service organization like a Boy Scout troop that, actually my school did this too. It was really cool how people got involved. But we had a Boy Scout troop, and the Boy Scouts have a career development badge, and they thought, hey, we have the expertise, it's all in our book, we can come in and do that guidance lesson for you and develop it. And so they did that. So there's lots of different ways that that they can implement. The other thing that will happen with your community organizations down the road is they'll start to see how they can reinforce what you're doing. So if you're having register, I don't know, where you're meeting with kids to talk about scheduling, for example, and you're tying in post-secondary opportunities in that discussion. It may be that the public library and the library in town is also going to do a display on different types of post-secondary education. So they'll start to see how they can complement what you're doing in the school, and that's when it really becomes powerful, because then everybody, no matter where kids turn, adults are giving them the same messages. It's very cool. Okay, and then the process. So here's our design process. You're going to start with the achievement goals. Then we're going to say what choices do kids need to make, and then we'll design the guidance counseling program to help kids make those choices. And again, I'm just going to speed through these because you've heard them a gazillion times. Okay, so now we're to the part on the school counseling portfolio. You're explaining to folks here, as part of getting involved in RSC, we're provided with a tool to design a school counseling portfolio online. And so every time we have one of these discussions, we're going to take all of your ideas, put it into a product, and then enter it into the online system. And at the end of all of this, we will submit that portfolio to the American School Counselor Association in consideration for the RAMP award. And then in Indiana, we're submitting on behalf of your school to the Department of Ed for the Indiana Gold Star School Counseling Award. And just as a reminder, in Indiana, if you get the Gold Star Award, you don't have to then apply for RAMP, since the two are so aligned. You automatically qualify for RAMP if you have Gold Star. Okay, then the norms discussion. So you're saying, okay, so we're going to have these discussions together this year. Let's decide what our norms are. So this slide, you might want to type in the norms as they're shared right on the screen, or take the slide out and use the poster. But one way or another, we want to make sure that people see their ideas going down. You can also explain that this is a brainstorm, so every idea is a good idea, and just make sure you write them all down. This is the first time where you're proving to people that you're hearing them. And so I like to write down the norms word for word exactly the way they say them. I don't change the words because they might view that as me putting my spin on their idea. So I just write them down exactly like they say. So then after all the ideas get up, then you're just asking folks, can you live with these norms? And if somebody says no, then you got to talk it out, get rid of it if if the group can't agree to it, because we only want the norms that everybody's going to agree to follow. Okay, so there's the norms, and then the consensus check. And then the next discussion is actually going to be your first product, which is what are the benefits of school counseling for those groups. And then here's the first slide, or use the poster, but here's a slide if you want it, where one of you can type in as the other one's facilitating. And you're just writing in student benefits, and then teacher benefits, administrator benefits, parent benefits, and economic benefits. And that's it. So then you're saying, thanks so much. Loved your input. It was so great to have all these different perspectives at the table. You guys thought of so many things that I wouldn't have thought of, and just it's so important that you're here. And then you're telling them that thank you for the input on the benefit statement, and when we come back next time we'll have the benefit statement ready and we'll share it with you. That'll be based on your input. One other little tip on that, if you can keep their wording exactly into the first benefit statement so they can see their words in that document, that also shows them that you're listening, and they'll be much more likely to be engaged. Okay, so that is the PowerPoint, and I think, let me see real quickly if we have any questions here. I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, I'm going to speed along here because this is a longer one, and I want to make sure that we don't go over. I'm probably going to go over a little bit, but hopefully not too much. Okay, so I'm going back to, let's go to the online system next. So when you log in, oops. When you go in, well, I may need to log in again. Yep, I've been inactive. Let me see if I can just go back to the same page. Okay, I am actually logged in this environmental charter school, so I tell you what, if that's, I usually ask ahead of time. If Beth or Andrea, let me just, Beth, I'm going to unmute you real quickly and just ask you if that's okay. If I can get you here. There we go. Oh, keeps disappearing. As soon as I go to move the cursor, the drop down disappears. Why is that? Well, I'm going to assume that that's okay. And if not, we won't share this recording with anyone, so I'll check with you later. Okay, so when I log in, I am going to the front page that looks like this. And then just a reminder, I'm always going to go to the process page to get started. And I have logged into the process page now. Notice I'm on first year. And you can see at the environmental school, charter school, they've got, they've got their steps checked off that they've done. A couple things they need to still do, which is fine. And they've got their advisory council. That's all in. That's great. And so now we are ready for Introduce Your Advisory Council to RSC, which is the September activity. So the first step is to watch the intro webcast. That's actually what we are recording right now. So we will post either this one or the one we're doing next here, and then you'll click on Tools and you'll be able to watch the webcast. So you may want to look at parts of the webcast right before you do your meeting. That's up to you. Then you're going to conduct Advisory Council Meeting 1, and in the Manual tab, if I click here, that will pop up the manual. So I could have gotten to it over here also. So two different ways to get there. I'm going to scroll down to Meeting 1, RSC Intro. Cover page, agenda, Advisory Council roster. The roster is just a it's just a sheet that looks like this, where ahead of time you would have put in everybody's names and their phone numbers and their email addresses, just so the advisory council could start to kind of get to know each other. This last column, do not fill this in ahead of time, because remember, at the meeting we're going to ask people what their perspective is. So if Jane Doe's name is over here, then when you're doing the introduction, you'd be asking Jane, who could you represent on the council? And she'd tell you, and then you'd handwrite it in, ask everybody to handwrite it in on their roster that's in front of them. Okay, so So roster intro presentation, this is the PowerPoint. The process diagram is just the diagram on the vision to action process on one piece of paper. A lot of schools don't use that, but it's there if you want it. And then meeting dates, we strongly suggest that you set up all of your meeting dates for the entire year before the first meeting. And so you know from the process page what month they're supposed to happen in and when the training is. You want to make sure that you get it after the training. And then just type in their dates here for the 6 meetings. So you can pass that out and ask everybody to save those dates on their calendar. Okay. Then in the tools section, there's some things I really want you to see. The first, in every month, every meeting, the first tool is a prep for that meeting, and the second tool is facilitator notes. So let's just look real quickly at what this looks like. In the prep for the meeting, that looks like this. Let me blow it up a little bit. And this is just a series of questions to help you get ready. When's the date of your meeting? Have you brainstormed the advisory council members? When are you going to call the advisory council members? Who's going to set dates for the advisory council meetings for the entire year, and when's that going to be done by? Who's going to determine the site for the first meeting, and when's that going to be done by? So you're just kind of creating, it's just kind of like a checklist of getting ready for this meeting. These are the things that we think you're going to need to do. So just kind of to keep anything from, sliding off your plate. So then the second document is the facilitator guide, and I just want to show you an example of what that includes. So the facilitator guide includes the objectives for the meeting. I would always read this because this is like what you're trying to do. That would be nice to know before you go in there. The meeting prep again is here. Handouts for the meeting. We suggest a name tag and then the handout packet. We just looked at all the handouts. And then if you're using the posters rather than the slides, you need those 2 posters to do the brainstorming on. And then the products of this meeting are the group norms poster, which a lot of schools like to bring that back to every discussion, just as a reminder. And then the benefits brainstorm poster. So you're going to come out of this meeting with 2 products. Then on the next part, we give you lots of different tips. For example, at the meeting, when people arrive, welcome them, let them know how much you appreciate their attendance. I always, when we do meetings, have somebody at the door thanking each person individually for coming as they walk in. And then just different tips. Here's one that might be kind of interesting. We use a lot of PowerPoint slides, but they're designed to switch about every 20 or 30 seconds. So in our slides, usually when I'm doing the presentations, however many slides there are, I divide that by 2, and that's how many minutes the presentation is going to take me. So so there's just tips. Each part of the agenda, there's tips for what might come up, some resistance you might hear and how to work through it, or if it's something that's hard to explain, we might give you some suggestions for how to explain it. So okay, we just wanted to make sure you saw that in the manual. And then anything that you need to facilitate the discussion. In this case, you've got the 2 posters, you've got the sample, and then finally tasks following the meeting. Always make sure you look at that, and there's one that I want to point out. So on this time, the task following the meeting is to enter the benefit statement online, to enter your minutes online, and to print and send the minutes to your advisory council. But also, this time, there's a prep for meeting 2. So meeting 2 requires that you show a VHS, a video, or to download and show the same thing. So this video, it's a 60-minute segment about the Frederick Douglass Academy in Harlem, and it's going to launch very nicely one of the discussions that you're having. Unfortunately, 60 Minutes is no longer producing the video, but we have a bunch of copies that we can loan you. They won't allow us to make copies, so at any rate, so I can't like give you one and then make more copies, so I can only loan them to you. But if you want to call our number, we'd be happy to loan it to you. Make sure that you call us 2 weeks before your meeting, and then we'll give you that, and then you can just send it to us right after your meeting. The other thing you can do is download the versions. We did not put this up on YouTube, but it's there. And so it's in 2 parts, and so you can actually one's on is linked to somebody's Facebook account, and then the other is on YouTube. So, but if you wanted to download, that's a different way. But we're happy to loan you a copy. Just give us a call, and we'll do that. Okay, so that is the manual. So always for each meeting there's going to be a section of handouts, and then there's going to be a section of tools. Okay, so let's go back to the process page, and now let's pretend that you've already had your meeting. So I'm back to the process page. I'm going to scroll down to meeting 1, which is Introduce Your Advisor Council to RSC. So I've conducted the meeting, and now I'm going to enter the benefit statement. So anytime we provide a tool, I would download it. This is actually a copy of the sample benefit statement. And then in this column, you're going to enter, click on the enter icon, and we just have given you boxes to type in the benefits. I think most of our schools use a bulleted list, and there's just a note up here. The website, the online system does not recognize special characters, but it will recognize an asterisk. So just use an asterisk to bullet any list that you have. Make sure you hit the save buttons. Okay, so there's the benefit statement. So you've entered that, and then entering the meeting 1 minutes. So I'm going to hit the enter button, and that brings up the minutes for your meeting, and I just put in the meeting date, select your month, select your date and the year, who's writing the minutes, and then just enter them. What most schools tell us is that they'll do their minutes in a Word document and then just cut and paste into the online system, and then don't forget to hit save at the bottom of that. Okay, so those are your minutes, and then finally the rubric items. Now, the rubric items are exactly what the reviewers are going to be looking at when they review your portfolio. So to me, it makes sense for you to do a self-review before you submit your portfolio. So I can, and I would do it at the end of each section. So I'm going to click on the rubric, and here is the list of benefits. And the only rubric items that the benefits for school counseling are written for, and then the 5 groups. And there's a link that goes to right back to your benefit statement, so if you want to see what your benefit statement has and then check that, you can. Okay, so that's the online system for this time, and let's see, just one more thing. Let me go back to the PowerPoint, because I also wanted to, there's some other rubric items that I wanted to point out to you. There we go. Okay. Okay. And I've got questions, and you're typing them good. Okay, Beth says it's fine to use their school. Thank you, Beth. Okay, there's a question about the action items for June and July, the self-studies. I'll go back and catch those in a second. Very good. Okay, that's great. I'm just going to keep that question pane open, and we'll check it again. Okay, so we talked about the submissions. There's the rubric for the benefit statement. Your advisory council agenda. Yeah, one of the rubric items for both ASCA and in Indiana is that you work with an advisory council. So to prove that, we're just asking you to upload your advisory council agendas. So just make sure that you've kept them. I would scan them all into one document because we're going to ask you to upload them as one document. You'll upload all 6 at the end of the year. So we just wanted to give you a heads up that you do need to have an agenda so that you can upload them, and you're using those agendas to prove that you actually did meet with your advisory council. On the minutes, you're going to type in your minutes into the online system. Here are the other rubric items. We want to make sure that your minutes include the names of those that were present and the groups that they represent. So, Jane Doe representing 3rd grade parents, so-and-so representing the Hispanic community. And again, we're using the groups that people said out loud in public that they could represent on your council. Then you're summarizing the activities and discussions. And the last one I put there in red, over the years we have discovered that this is incredibly important. We'd like you in your minutes to reference specific people and their specific ideas, like Jim Green added that one benefit for the business community is that blank. And if you do that with 3 or 4 people at each of your meetings, again, it's a message to people that you are there to listen. And they'll be back to meeting 2 if they understand that. It really means a lot to people when you not only heard what they said, but you thought it was so important that you put it in writing in the minutes. And I can almost guarantee you'll be back at the next meeting. So I think in schools, at least in the schools that I've been involved with, there's a lot of meetings where the community comes in and we just talk at them. And this is totally different. This is where they're talking at us and we're listening. So we kind of have to change that norm for them. And I know for me, I think it was actually many meetings in until they realized I really did want to listen, and they started talking. So we constantly want to give these messages, we're listening, we're listening. So this is just one more way to do it, and a very powerful way. When you send the minutes out, it's there. I know that for me personally, if I go to a meeting and I'm just talked at, I don't go back to the next meeting because, that's just kind of a waste of my time unless it's something I'm really, really, really interested in. But if I'm there and people are wanting to hear what I have to add to the discussion, then that's engaging for me. So, and I think your folks on your council will feel the same way. Okay, manual page, we talked about that, and I think the rest of that is, let me just flip through that. We did this live. And we did this live. Okay. Okay, that's it. So I think this will be a wonderful meeting for you. I know for me, the first time I met with my advisory council, I was scared to death. So many times we only hear from parents and community members when they come to school because they're angry and they're not happy. And it was so cool to learn that the community and the parents and the teachers, that we all had the same dreams for kids, and that they were willing to help me help kids make good choices. That was going to help them as teachers, it would help them as parents, and that they were willing to help me do that. I mean, it was really awesome. So, and I hear that over and over again from schools, just how cool it is to get the community to come in and start working on this together. So, okay, I'm not able to pull up your hands, but I can pull up your questions. So let me see if we have any other questions in here. Oh, I want to go back to the process page. Let me do that right now on June and July. And then if anybody else has questions, just type them in. Okay, process page. Let's see, I'm going to here. And we're going up to the process page. Okay. Okay, in June and July, there were some self-studies that we asked you to do last spring, and with everything else we were doing in surveys, it's really, there are a lot of schools that just kind of miss this on the radar. So not a big deal, but we would like you to go back and do these self-studies and upload. The first one is program self-studies, and that is it's just a questionnaire where it says, do you have this, do you have this, do you have this, and then you just check off the ones that you have. Sometimes schools tell us they don't have anything that's listed there, and that's fine. If you did, you wouldn't need to do redesigning school counseling. If you were already using data and you already had accountability and all that stuff. And so don't worry if on that program self-study there you can't check off anything. But my guess is from most schools we hear that probably 80% of redesigning school counseling is already there. They're just needing to organize it and to quantify it and to make it in a way that they can present with data. So so we'll see what you find when you get in, but don't worry if on that program self-study you have none of it. That's fine. The counselor self-study is it's a study that we suggest that either you sit down as a department and do collectively, or each counselor does it. You only need to upload one. You don't need to upload everybody's. We just want to make sure that you know how to do it. And basically that's asking you about the counselor's knowledge level, their skill level, and their dispositions. So in knowledge, there's questions about, academic development and career development, personal social development, and the skill, there's questions about, different counseling approaches. And then in the dispositions, it's things like, do you like kids? And, are you cheerful? So just, as we've worked with counselors, and actually these were based, we got to be involved in helping Indiana write their licensing standards for school counselors, and these are based on those licensing standards. So then the resources self-study, that's just a questionnaire about how much time do you have, how much funding do you have, what's your counselor to student ratio. It's just kind of looking at what are your resources. We'll use that information in one of the meetings that's coming up. School demographics, that just, helps you think about, okay, yes, we do have a Hispanic population, it's this much. We do have a low-income population, it's this much. So just kind of getting that into everybody's awareness. And then the rubric items, you can just click on that, but it basically just says that these are complete. So not a heavy rubric on that one, just that they're done. So let's see what other questions people have. Can you please, this is from Beth, can you please clarify how many advisory council meetings there are, 5 or 6? The process page seems to not sync with our monthly plans. Okay, let me check on that and make sure we're synced there, because let's go to the process page first. So in the process page, which is the one that's accurate if there is a discrepancy, we've got Advisory Council, Introduce number 1, Vision number 2, Goals 3, Expand Resources, Priority Goals is 4, Root Causes is 5, and Activities is 6. So let me see, I'm going to try to unmute you again. So I want to find out. Nope, it's just not working. Okay, so Beth, can you maybe type in where it is that you're seeing it where there's 5? With our monthly plans. The process page seems to not sync with our monthly plans. And I'm not receiving anything, so she's probably scrambling trying to find that page so she can let me know. I tell you what, Beth, if you can send me an email, we'll get that fixed if there's a place where we've said 5. Oops, here we go. It had been from previous notes. Okay. She says it may have been in previous notes. The place, excuse me, the place where we seemed out of sync was June, July sections when we were in session. Okay. I did find, actually I'm kind of hesitating because I found a place that I've corrected on the, actually it was on that annual calendar Word doc that I just pulled up where it had 5. So, but it should be 6. I created the monthly, or the, now I'm forgetting the names of things. It was in this meeting dates. I haven't uploaded this yet, but if you were to download that right now, it would be a different number than 6. So I had to make the correction there. But yes, it's 6, and if you find places that are messed up, just send them to me and we'll get it fixed. As you can imagine, with an online system that's as robust as RSC is, it's, I always have to make sure we get things updated everywhere when there's been a change. Okay. Okay, I think that's it. So I will close the webinar, and again, I cannot wait for our next meeting because I'd love to, can't wait to hear from you all on how that first meeting went, and feel free to call, especially if it's last minute and there's something that doesn't make sense. Give us a call and we'll help you work through that. And Sharon, the next time we do this, please call in on a telephone. Then we'll be able to unmute you and we'll be able to talk. So I think that would be great. So, okay. Very good. So thanks, everybody. And again, thank you on behalf of your students and your community for doing this type of work. This is developing a data-driven system is kind of like leading edge, and it's time-consuming. Let's be honest, you're putting some time into this, and I just think your school and your community is just very, very lucky to have you. So don't forget that you're making a difference in the lives of kids.